Okay, welcome everybody to another episode of I'm Doing Great, the podcast. I'm your host, Mike. That's Gina over there on the other side. Gina's going to do this intro because I don't know.
This is the first time
I don't know him.
Yeah, we literally just met.
Yeah, we literally did.
I'm so excited for this episode. It's not going to be political, which is a really nice break from all the political content we've done. Mark is a good friend of mine. I don't even know how to introduce him because he's this mixture of a friend, a mentor. I think of him as an older brother, even though he's younger than me, which is kind of annoying. And he's been such an important person in my life and my family's life over the last year. And he's got so much to talk about and a lot of interesting stuff that we're going to get into today. So Mark, Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I think I'm hard to introduce because I'm really just boring, guys. She's hyping me up.
The funny thing is I don't know how to explain you. I was trying to tell Mike about you and I didn't know how to explain you.
I don't know.
Are you you
I think I struggle with the same thing.
Exactly.
If you figure it out, let me know.
I will.
Let me know.
You don't seem to be a very serious person just meeting you off the bat. So should I can we joke? Can we be sarcastic?
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah. I love the joke and
yeah.
I think I just take life seriously.
Okay.
Outside of that, I mean, I don't take individual situations seriously, but it does infuriate me when people think that life is just nilly-dilly, 24/7.
So the thing about Mark is that he wakes up at 3 or 4 a.m. every morning. And you're like, why don't you tell us your morning routine? Because when I listen to this, I feel like a lazy piece of shit.
No reason for that. I honestly, I've been a little bit more lenient lately, but typically I'll wake up at 3:30. I preset my coffee pot. I literally wake up for coffee. That's how much I love it. And that time, I mean, a lot of people ask me, why do I wake up so early? It's just because the world is a different kind of quiet at 3 o'clock in the morning. It really is and I started waking up that time. Actually, I started waking up at 4 a.m. when I was in prison. It was because it was so loud all the time. That was literally the only time that I could even get quiet time was if I woke up before everybody else. But I ended up loving that time of the day so much of just, it literally takes me 45 minutes to drink my first cup of coffee. I won't look at my phone. I won't read yet. I won't write yet. I just sit in my favorite chair and I sip a cup of coffee and I like to think it's okay, coffee and God, that's the only thing that I want to be a part of before 5 a.m. And then I'll read, I write, I usually read a mixture of a book that I'm reading, plus I'll read some theological stuff. I'm not religious. I don't read any of the big books, but I have a favorite philosopher. His name is James Allen, who he was super, super devout in a way, and a lot of his writings do have to do with just finding divinity in the universe and God and all that stuff. So I'll typically read a little bit of that. I'll read a little bit of nonfiction, and then I'll do my first workout and get to work by 8 usually.
This guy's at the office 6 or 7 days a week. Okay,
so you casually said it. You were in prison.
Oh yeah,
we got a felon in the house. That's a first.
Is it a first? Jeez,
it's a first. Is it? We've never had a felon before, right? Can you vote, or is
No.
you still can't vote?
No.
Is it you forever can't vote, or there's a time limit?
I feel like there's this is really sad, but I don't even know. I know that there's restrictions on voting and bearing arms.
Yes,
right.
So I can't own a gun and I can't vote. I know for sure I can't do either one of those things at this moment because I haven't done whatever you're supposed to do in order to
register or any of that.
Yeah, I haven't.
Yeah.
Are you done with probation, all that stuff?
Yeah. So parole. When you go to prison, you come home on parole. Probation is when you don't have to go. You know, it's the alternative.
Oh, so that's the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so I came home. I served parole for 3 years. It's interesting thinking about the concept of parole. You're free, but you're not free. And I mean, there's an infinite number of applications that we could talk about that concept in and of itself. But you're free, but you're not free. When you're in prison, they refer to you as state property, and so the reason why is just because you don't have, you are your property and you don't have control over your own life. People make your decisions for you and they set, parameters within which you can live. And so being on parole is really interesting because it's the same, you're free, but you're not really free. And there's all these really tight parameters. And if you just if you go outside the lines ever so slightly, you go right back to prison, you know?
So you have to constantly check in with your parole officer, right? Do they drug test you all the time too?
Yeah, they did. I mean, the truth is I was every parole officer I ever had was like, holy, like, I can't even believe that you were in prison. I was at that point already before I came home from prison. So I was just a parole officer's dream. I was building businesses and I had, stable living situation and no baby mama drama or anything like that. So they're just like, can all my parolees be like you? So they didn't bother me for the most part, but it can be very, very rigorous.
So let's start from the top. I know Mike's eager to get into this. It's such an interesting story. I mean, I guess you can I actually want to start with your childhood, because when I met Mark and I knew him for probably like a few months before I started hearing more about his story, I just would have never guessed that he had the background in the childhood and even, obviously prison experience that he did. But 'cause I just find it so fascinating that somebody who had such a rough start to life has the outlook that you have. So why don't you tell us, what was your childhood like?
I don't like describing my upbringing as rough, just because I understand that that's like a really relative term. And I'm acutely aware of the fact that like a lot of people have a lot worse. And one of my main missions at this point in my life is helping people see and realize that like that stuff is just a part of life. Everybody gets dealt a different hand, and regardless, like, you have two options. You have to deal with it and accept that that's just your situation and decide where you're going to go from here. And so I try not to describe it as rough, but I did. I was born to two drug addicts, and my father left my life indefinitely when I was 2 years old. My mother was, addicted to crack cocaine, alcohol, and I have an identical twin, and him and I were put into a foster care system. We were taken away from our mom when we were 15 months old, and we were introduced to who eventually became our legal guardians, but we were introduced to a foster family, and back and forth. My mom would go to rehab, go to jail, come back, get her kids back. And that continued to happen for the first 2 or 3 years of our life. We moved to Florida, with our mom, and it was just an awful living situation. I mean, we were literally homeless. We were staying in a women's and children's shelter, just in family's house, and then back to a shelter. My mom would have a job and be clean for a little while and then relapse and go back to her lifestyle. And unfortunately, whether it's because of the medications or because of me just suppressing those memories, I have like almost zero memories of my life before being like 10 years old, like almost zero. When my foster parents told me that when they finally got custody of us permanently, which happened when I was 11, and I can actually tell you that story. That was a really big moment in my life. But they told me that when they got me, that I was on so many psych meds, because my mom, my biological mother, she would go to all these different doctors and get me diagnosed with things because it would increase the amount of money that she would get from the government. When you have a kid who has certain whatever, they'd give you more support. And so she had me diagnosed for all kinds of things, depression and anxiety and ADHD. And I was on all these psych meds. My who I refer to as my mother, but my foster mother, she told me, Mark, when you came to us, you were like a zombie. You're on so many psych meds, and we just stopped all of it immediately. And you're a normal kid. You don't, whatever. But yeah, so the way that I transitioned from Florida back to where I eventually grew up for the rest of my adolescence was upstate New York, and that's where I'm originally from. At one point we were in Florida, and my twin brother, he asked my biological mother, "Hey, can I go live with Lauren Dennis?" Lauren Dennis is my foster parents' name, and my mom was just like, "Yeah, you can go," and sent him up to New York and went, and he decided from that point forward that he was going to live permanently with our foster parents. Much better life, much better living situation. But me, I was like really, really attached to not only like my sister, I have a little sister, but also my mom. Like I was like a caretaker already at that point. Like my mom was clearly not running the household, you know, and so I was so attached to her that I wouldn't leave. And my mom told me, hey, we're going to go on vacation. We're going to go visit your brother. And she flew me up to New York, and, you know, I was so excited to just see him. And we drove to this building, this big brick building, and she's like, hey, you know, whatever, we just have something to do. So we go in, and later on, I realized it was a family courthouse. And my mom like told me, they're like, you know, here, wait right here, I'll be right back. And she like went in the courtroom and never came back. And like who came back was my foster parents. And they're like, hey, you're just going to go with us now. And I was so attached to my mom at that point that I was like, no, I'm not, you know, I am not going anywhere. And this is one of the earliest memories that I have, was like, they had to carry me out of the courthouse, kicking and screaming, put me in the car and bring me to my foster parents' house. So it was a really pivotal moment in my life, because my foster parents were really good for me. It's a good thing that happened. But in the moment, man, it was bad. It was really, really bad. So that was childhood. And then from there, I mean, I wish I could say that it was all uphill, but my foster parents had one biological son. His name was Travis. And he was the only person that I like took to, you know. He wasn't a female, which I think because I was so attached to my mom, like I wouldn't accept any other females in my life. And so Travis was like this rock star. He was 8 years older than me, just badass dude. He beat people up and, you know, listened to country music and smoked weed. And it was just I just loved him. I loved him so much. And he was just a man's man. It was cool. It was the first time I had a male figure in my life that I like looked up to. And then when I was 16, like, you know, he overdosed and died. And that just, my whole world just kind of fell apart again. So a lot of people, you know, I'm sharing that because a lot of people ask like, okay, I can't imagine you ending up in prison. Well, it was after my brother died that I kind of just really did, my life spiraled a little bit. And
it's not like your brother had struggled with drugs for a while. Yeah. Cause didn't you say he'd gotten injured? Cause he was an athlete and got injured, right?
Yeah. So
this is your foster
my foster brother.
Okay.
Yep. And the sad part is this is my foster parents' only biological child. They fostered 5 children. So like now imagine them, like they only have one biological child. They lose him and they still have all these other kids that are younger. You know, it was just a sad situation. But yeah, he lifted weights really regularly. He lived a similar lifestyle to the one that I live now. And he injured his rotator cuff in his shoulder, went to the doctor, but he didn't have health insurance. They gave him a prescription. He was on opiates, and it evolved so quickly. It was like, you know, pills to Oxycontin to fentanyl to heroin to dead. You know? Yeah.
And it happened quickly, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a number of months. Seriously.
Did your foster parents resent you and the other kids that they fostered at all, or no?
You know, it's hard to say because I spent the most time with them. Mm-hmm. You know, I spent the most time with them. And so I think the answer, if the question was like, do they resent you guys for still being here? The answer would undoubtedly be no, you know, but I think there is a piece of my parents that are like, man, you know, you knew, and I knew earlier, or I was exposed to it more, gotcha. Or I'd been, and I didn't say it. That was my brother. I didn't say anything, you know? So that there has been interactions and conversations where that's come up, where it's like, you know, you knew. And in fact, I ended up leaving my parents' house right shortly after my brother died. Because me and my mom, we got into a fight one day. I was smoking weed and she's like, you know, whatever. To her, weed is a drug. Like it's the same as heroin. Like it really is. And yeah, that, like something like that came up that day. And I just fucking packed 2 bags and I had my own car at that point. And I just went in my car and I just fucking left. And I didn't speak to my parents for like 2 years.
Wow. Like, but Matt was still there?
No, he, I don't remember if he left before me or after. No, he left after me. So yes, yeah. Okay. So he was still there.
That's his twin.
That's his twin. Yeah, Matt's his twin.
Yeah. So childhood was messy. It definitely was. And it's interesting because we went from like living like super poor, low income, urban environments to living with my foster parents, which was like super rural environments. They're middle class, but we wouldn't have known it. You know what I mean? When I was a kid, like we never went without, had a nice house to live in all the time, played all the sports, and we went to a great school district. That's another thing is like they moved us to a school district where my twin brother and our foster brother and myself, we were the only black people in the whole school district, like in the whole district, K through 12. And so that was like a really valuable experience looking back on it too.
Where's your sister during this time?
My sister is with my mom in Florida. She never left.
Okay.
And I think that when my mom was losing her kids and we're going in all these different directions, I think my sister went with my Aunt Michelle. So went with my mom's sister.
Okay. So you're 16 years old, your brother dies, and then when you leave your parents' house, what happens? Where do you go?
Well, at that point I was already like selling marijuana, so I'd had a little small business rolling, and
you were an entrepreneur.
I was an entrepreneur. So yeah, I mean, I was like, especially that was a catalyst actually for what inevitably led me to prison. But yeah, I was thinking like I didn't want to drop out of school. So I couldn't get like a full-time job. And I loved smoking weed at the time. So and I had friends that loved smoking weed. So I'm just like, I think I can swing this. And I had a guy that was willing to rent me an apartment. Like I was 16, so I couldn't sign a lease or anything. But he's like, if you just pay me cash, ahead of time, then no big deal. You can have it. So that's what I did, and I was still going to school every day, and I would sell weed and, pay my bills, and that was it.
Wow. Living by yourself, dealing, and still going to school.
Yeah.
So what led to prison? What happened? It could be an abridged version if you want.
Yeah. I'm tough. I'm bad at abridged versions. I just get talking, but so I just got really depressed. Actually, when my brother died, I was playing basketball. Basketball was my life. It really was. Like, I feel like most people when they're teenagers, they either get into art or they get into sports or they have something, mm-hmm. I think that's where they find their first identity. That was me for sure. Kobe Bryant was like my idol, and I was pretty good at basketball, and I was just in such a bad mental state that one day, in the middle of a game, halftime of a game, we're playing against our rival school. My coach was just giving me attitude. And so I literally just put my sweatpants on, took my shoes off, and like quit in the middle at halftime of a game. I was like, okay, cool. I won't play. And the next day I came in and I gave my coach my uniform. And so like, that's where I was like I would show up to school and I would still do everything I was supposed to do because I assumed that I was going to play basketball in college. Like that was the next step. And that was the point at which I was like, well, fuck it. I don't got anything going for me at this point. Like I was a really good student. I got really good grades, but after basketball got taken off of, the table, I just had no motivation to do anything productive in life. And so I went down a really deep depression. I started using other things other than marijuana. So like, I am a huge fan of psychedelics. I wish I could say I was. No, I still am a proponent, but I really am. But that's what I got into was psychedelics. And as I did, I also started selling that stuff as well. So eventually I got pulled over in a car with an assortment of LSD, mushrooms, hash oil, ketamine, MDMA. I had an assortment.
You Timothy Leary?
I loved. I mean, hey,
Timothy Leary's great.
Timothy was the man. Timothy was the man. But yeah, that's eventually what I got arrested for. It's so stupid though. Our drug laws, like Like I did
The mushroom stuff is kind of crazy when you think about it.
Yeah.
The LSD, ketamine, like I get that stuff because it's chemically manufactured and stuff, but the mushrooms I don't get.
Yeah, but even I don't know a single person that's like addicted to LSD. Like you can't even do it every day.
People do.
Do they? I mean,
I don't
know.
think
I've never
you
done
do.
LSD.
Like I really don't, because in my experience, and I have a lot of experience, you take acid today. If you take it tomorrow, it doesn't affect you the same.
Right.
Like if you took it tomorrow, you would have to take twice as much. And like there's only so many.
Well, that's why people microdose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can do something like that, and it does chemically affect you, but it doesn't. You don't get high.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you want to get high on LSD, you can't do it every day. You literally can't. I've tried.
So when you got pulled over, was one of those charges, I guess, conspiracy to
no none of
just
that.
like something like, and that's to sell, to distribute.
No,
really.
And that's the thing that
what were the charges then?
Possession.
Just possession.
Yes, and I don't get hung up on this because I've resigned from this fight a long time ago, because if not I would have went crazy. But like I went to prison and I eventually did 5.5 years, but even still my original sentence was 4 years. So I got sentenced to 4 years in prison for possession. And there's people that were in there with me for sex offenses, for violent crimes that got less time.
Oh,
so no distribution or conspiracy charges with you
none
at
of
all.
it. Straight possession.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
And I'm telling you, I seen pedophiles go in and come out in a year and a half.
Oh my god.
And I'm sitting there for 5.5 years for possessing not even the stuff that's on the street killing people, but psychedelics,
Schedule 1 drugs.
And it's because they're Schedule 1. Exactly. I got charged with a Class A felony, which the equivalent, murder is a Class A felony. I got a Class A drug possession.
How old were you when that happened?
Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
I don't even know, 18, 19.
Okay, so because I'm just asking myself, if you were 17, would that have affected the charges?
Oh, absolutely, it would.
Yeah.
If I got charged as a minor.
Well, you didn't have any priors, right?
Never. I'd never been in trouble before. Never been arrested before.
So how did you even?
And this is the crazy part. Okay, I don't want to fight this battle, but I got pulled over in the passenger seat of a car. The owner of the car was a white kid.
Yeah. And
that's right.
The drugs were not in my possession.
Where were they?
In the car.
Oh, really?
Okay. The drugs were in the car.
It's not like they were on you. The drugs were on you.
The owner of this vehicle was driving the vehicle and got pulled over. And quite honestly, it looked like just as much of a ruffian as I did. And I didn't say anything. I didn't say they were his, but I also didn't say they were mine. And he got probation and I got 4 years in prison.
Can I ask you a question? And this is going to sound like a shitty question, but who had a better lawyer?
Well, he had family that was involved. Like
I was going to ask if he had connections.
He had family that was involved in like the local government.
Yeah.
But I did have a good lawyer. I mean, I had money to pay for one.
Because that's usually like one of the things that you hear is, based on that sentences are rendered heavier based on race or against a race, a lot heavier than another race. And I think a lot of people, they don't look into like how good of a lawyer does one person have versus the other?
And then also
how many
the money
connections and money? Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Which sucks.
It does.
But that's just the way that the system is built, that you can get around it with any system. There are always
I actually
ways
I had a really good lawyer.
Yeah.
But I think at that point, like I pled out. Like I didn't fight it. I didn't go to trial.
You pled guilty?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, because I knew that he had connections, and really worst come to worst, then I didn't want to take a chance that he's just going to testify against me. Like I'm not going to.
I'm very interested. He's not driving the car.
I
Someone
know.
else is driving the car, and the
Exactly.
drugs
So
are just in the car.
By default, it goes to the driver.
Right, exactly.
So I don't know.
Do you know where this guy is now?
I don't keep up.
Yeah.
I don't keep up because I know where I'm at, and that's
Yep.
And that's the thing. It's so sweet, man. Gina, I'm going home soon for the first time.
So upstate?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going home for the first time since I got arrested. And I mean, I do okay in life, but like I know that I'm doing much better than everybody back there.
Yeah, he's being modest. Mark crushes it at life. Like he crushes it.
But I'm going home for the first time in a decade. and we're going to a concert that I know everybody's going to be at.
So you're going to see everyone.
Oh, and I literally, it's so evil of me, but I can't wait to see him. I can't wait. It is going to be, because Matt and I, this is not an exaggeration. Like, we were quite literally some of the most recognizable faces in the entire region because we're identical twins.
Yeah.
And because we were really good athletes.
Right.
So like when you're in high school, that's how you win the popularity contest, is you're the good athletes. And we're identical twins. It's hard to miss us. So we were so well known and we were so popular. And I feel like when I got arrested and when he got arrested, I feel like everybody was just like, oh, like they were expecting it, like, oh, knew that was going to happen or whatever. Like it just, the vibe and everybody just fell off immediately. And, they say you learn who your friends are when you're going through something rough. Well, it's true, and we realized, man, none of those people were our friends.
So is Matt going with you too? Are you guys both going? Matt was also in prison.
Yeah.
Too.
This is who's Matt?
Matt's
your
his
twin.
Sorry,
okay.
I keep saying that. Matt's
so the person
twin.
arrested with you wasn't named Matt, or what?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Wow. So you're gonna go home soon.
Oh, and I can't wait. I can't wait.
It's just gonna rub
it's just, no, I'm not. I'm just gonna smile and wave and just hi. It's great to see you, but they know and I'll know. Know, and it's the same with my family. Like, that's to be honest. Like, I love my parents are the only. I won't do holidays. I don't do anything like that anymore because for me, I refuse to play this game that like everybody in the world plays. Like, everybody like plays this game where we can all be just fake friends all the time. Like, I don't need friends. Like, I would rather just have a few.
So savage.
It's for real.
I know, but that's why we're the same like that.
I don't need friends, and so we don't have to pretend to be friends or anything like that. Like, and I will never pretend. And so, when I go home, like, I have my mom will tell me all the time, "Oh, your family wants to see you." Well, they didn't want to see me when I was in prison. They didn't want to see me when I was, addicted to drugs. They didn't want to see me when I was homeless. So now when I'm doing well, now they want to see me. No, I'm good. You guys can, just go on about your business the way that you have been for the past 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel that's the same way about friends, family. It doesn't matter. I only want people around me who, will just ride the waves, good, bad, or indifferent.
So now I want to talk a lot about your experience in prison because you were in solitary confinement for a long time. Long time. And this is kind of one of the things that I was telling you about. There's so many fascinating stories. You tell us about solitary confinement. Let's start there. Solitary confinement. Why did you end up in there? How long did you stay in there?
How long into the sentence were you serving?
Honestly, immediately.
Really?
Immediately I went to solitary because I was a rookie. I thought I was so smart, I went to solitary confinement almost immediately. I don't know how long it was, but I went upstate is how we describe it. But I went upstate and immediately I just went back to what I was doing in the street. I went back to selling drugs. I know that I'm a pretty calculated guy, and one thing that I detest is in prison. The gangs run prison, and I fucking hate gangs. Like, just the whole concept of like ganging up, and in there they would extort people, and they would target the weak people or the white people. To be honest, they would just target the white guys, and they would extort them. They would beat them up. They would abuse them, and I just hated that mentality. And so I recognized immediately that the person who really runs the prison is the person who controls all the drugs. So I was like, cool, I'll be that guy. Like, I know this game. And that's what I did. I immediately figured out, okay, how can I get these drugs in here? I got drugs in there, and then I just got caught with them immediately. Like, I got caught like immediately. I go to the box for the first time, and it was like 14 months straight. 14 months right out of the gate.
14 months straight in the box?
Yeah.
Okay, so describe the box. So describe like a regular room. And then describe this box. And were you in what sort of?
So I was in a medium security.
That's what I was just about to ask. Okay.
So I was in medium security my entire time in there. And medium security is actually, I don't know. Gina shared a video. You shared a video on your Instagram story today where I talked a little bit about it. And medium security is not that bad. It's not what you guys picture when you think about prison. It's actually open dormitory style. So there's just a massive warehouse basically, and it's just rows of beds, but there's no actual separation between people and spaces other than like a little divider. And so that's normal. And then there will be this big room where there's all the beds, and then there will be an attached room where that's more like a day room where they have TV, table, card tables, things like that. So when you go to the box, it is what you picture when you think about like prison. It is a very small, cramped cement cell, basically. There's a metal sink. The metal sink is attached to the toilet. So the toilet's here and the sink is the top of the toilet. And then there's like a stainless steel plate of metal on the wall that's supposed to be your mirror. There's really just slits for windows. There's actually no windows itself. And a lot of times those are just caked with dust. So you don't have much natural light in there. And there's usually a bunk bed in there. So they try to put 2 people in there at a time, but I never did really well with bunkies. So, but yeah, that's the box. And it's tough because me and Gina were talking about this at dinner actually one night. It is inhumane. Like I will literally I will put that out there. It is inhumane. Like the first several days, you don't have anything, any personal property, nothing, no books, no paper, no pen, no music. There is nothing in there. And what I experienced and what I realized is that it is very easy to slip into a very bad mental spot at that point. A lot of guys just go crazy. And it's because 99 times out of 100, it's probably the first time in that person's life that they've ever been locked up with their own thoughts. You know, like I think that we live in a society where we all just conveniently distract ourselves 24 hours a day. Like we wake up, look at our phones, we have TV, we have, things to do at work. There's an infinite number of distractions. And I think very, very few people have actually disconnected to the point where they are completely alone with their own thoughts. And when you're in the box, like you got there for a reason. You've got some things that you need to work through. And for me, like all of the emotional trauma just smacked me right in the face. And there was no escaping it because I couldn't, there was nothing to distract me. I just sat on my bed all day and stared at a concrete wall. And that was an almost unbearable period where there was no distractions. Eventually you get a journal and you get, books to read and things like that. And that stuff helped me because at that point I had worked through that initial discomfort and now I was leaning into it. And so the box was very productive for me. And I still have some of those journals. I share them sometimes on social media, but the box is really, really tough. There's no talking in there. And so like if you talk and the guards hear you, they will literally just, the next time that there's a time to serve meals, they'll just walk past your cell. They won't give you a meal. Like, so you learn really quickly that you should not talk. And that loneliness, that isolation is so unbearable that guys will literally talk to their cellmate because they can't stand being by themselves. And they know that it means that they won't eat. Like that's how difficult it is to just sit by yourself when you've never done it.
And you
before.
can't even talk to yourself.
No.
That is so inhumane. When he told me that, I was shocked. So
it is inhumane, but there's so many people out there like these social justice warriors, and I love you guys. I love you. I know you have good intentions, but like that shit is supposed to be hard. Like that's me. I've been there. I did 14 months initially, but cumulatively I did like over 2 years in the box out of 5.5. So I'm telling you that shit is hard. It's supposed to be hard. And now that same prison that I was in, all those same prisons, they give their inmates tablets. They basically have fucking iPads in there. And it's like, it's making it comfortable. And it's bad. It's a really bad thing. Like they think they're doing those people justice. You're not, it's making it easier and easier and easier to tolerate prison.
Did that have any type of physical toll being in solitary confinement on you?
Oh, 100%. I was fucking 140 pounds soaking wet. Right?
Did you get to go outside at all during the day in the box?
They call it 23 in 1. So 23 hours a day. you're locked in, and then they'll give you usually an hour. And solitary confinement has like almost like an attached like just space. It's maybe 6 feet wide and 4 feet deep, and that's your space for being outdoor recreation. So you can like, it's big enough to do push-ups right there. That's probably it. Air squats.
That's crazy.
What about like showering and stuff like that?
So you get 5-minute shower 3 days a week, and it's 5 minutes on the dot. And so this is where it gets interesting. If you have a cellmate, well, now the two of you have 5 minutes to split. And it's just, it's tough, man. It really is.
That's why. Did you ever forego food in order to talk?
So eventually you get to, so in that first week or so is when you're like in reception, I guess you could call it, in the box. And then once they'll move you, you don't have a cellmate in that first week or so. So there's no bunkie or anything like that. And then they move you to what's called the big box, where there you can talk. So after a while, you're okay. But it's that first week that like fucking breaks you. You know, it really does. The box was.
Do you only have a concept of time just because the guards have a schedule?
No, you don't.
Really?
Dude, that's a really cool thing that you bring up. Like at one point, I literally remember the day, but I thought to myself, man, this kind of just seems like one big day. You know, like there was no concept of time. You don't have much natural light coming in. So it just seemed like in this I don't know, infinitely going day. It was just one big day that I was in the box. And the longer that I stayed, I had no idea how long I was even in there. Yeah.
Jeez.
It was,
do you have any, and obviously this is outside of solitary confinement, do you have any connection with the outside world?
Yeah, eventually. I didn't, because I was in there for drugs. So when you're in there for drugs, they assume that you are smuggling them in somehow. And so they don't give you like visits, and they don't give you like, they take certain privileges away because those are opportunities for you to smuggle things. So I would write letters to my family, and I would wait for the mail.
Okay. Because I'd always wonder, I think of things like American Gangster with Denzel, when he spends like 20 or 30 years inside of like a federal prison, then he comes out and it's New York City in the 90s versus, you know, the early 70s. So how that must feel kind of seeing the world. But I imagine you didn't have that experience where you're like, everything's changed. An iPhone.
No.
What's an iPhone?
Nah, everything didn't change. But the one thing that did is technology.
Right.
Like sometimes I try to explain to people, a lot of things progress linearly, but technology doesn't. It progresses exponentially. Like every new technological development, it makes the next one bigger and faster. And so when I came home, like I had never had a smartphone before. I'd never had social media, you know, like Instagram. I didn't know how to use it or anything like that. So,
wow.
Even this is the extent to which I have an aversion to technology. Is when I was running, I owned a gym, and I had a nutritional coaching business. I would literally meet with every single client. I was working with hundreds of people at this point, but I would meet with every single person and write their shit out by hand. And MyFitnessPal was a thing. Like it was a thing. It was free. It was available, and I wouldn't use it. And one day, one of my friends was like, "Mark, like, why don't you use MyFitnessPal? It's so much easier." And I'm like, "No, I'm good. I got it." Yeah.
Gina, explain MyFitnessPal.
MyFitnessPal is an app where you can track everything that you eat, and it calculates your macros and your calories. Etc.
Yeah, like five years ago, it was like the app that nutrition coaches would use to just connect with their clients, and I could access whatever food you were logging to give you feedback. Right. And instead, I'm just depending on their feedback, saying, "Oh yeah, well I had eggs and toast for breakfast," and I'm okay, cool, you know. And it was purely because I just didn't want to learn the technology.
What was your time span of incarceration? From what year to what year?
2013.
Okay.
To 2018.
Okay, because Instagram was kind of like, it was known, but it wasn't as obviously.
It was a thing. It
right.
existed, but I never had one.
Right.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That's not long ago.
What was the worst part about prison?
Oh man.
I tried to insert an Office joke in there.
I don't watch The Office. Everybody gives me stuff
I tried
for
to do it.
That's one of my favorite episodes, Prison Mike.
Yeah.
You got a good life. You got a good life in here.
So I guess prison, looking back, I can't see it for other than a very positive experience.
Right.
That's the truth. I mean, the worst part, I don't know. The worst parts were even the best parts. Like seriously, like I got jumped one time really bad.
Oh yeah, this is the story I wanted you to tell.
I got jumped one time really bad, and yeah, that was a bad experience, but it was a great experience. So in prison, like I said, the gangs run prisons, and in New York State, the Bloods are, at least when I was in there, I always, every time I say this, I have somebody on social media reach out to me like, oh, you know, because they're with some different gang and they think that they're better. All right. So, but when I was in there, the Bloods ran the prisons. And so every compound, every prison, and I was at like 8 of them because I kept getting in trouble. And every time you get in trouble, they move you. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So you'll see, for good reason. But so every prison compound has like a big homie, and the big homie is the leader of the Bloods in that space. And so I had already kind of went through my transition, or at least I was going through a transition from being a bad guy, you know, running. I ran all the drugs and all the gambling for a little while. And so I did have a lot of influence. And during that time, the gangs like kind of catered to me because, you know, I was a guy. And so I went through this transition, and everybody respected it at this point. I still had a lot of respect from people, but the big homie, what really happened, which I don't know if I've ever shared, is that there was a female prison guard who was the main guard of our housing unit. And she liked me a lot. You know, like she would flirt with me and all this stuff. And I was just strictly business like the whole time. But he really liked her. And I mean, to be honest, like any woman that works in there, you know, they all like him because we don't have access to women, you know. So
right.
I wasn't interested, but he really liked her, and she would cater to me. And like I would go to bed at a certain time, and she would like literally turn off the lights in the certain section that my bed was, you know, just so I could sleep. And like, it's just unheard of. They don't accommodate you like that. And she would like bring food in from the outside and like, you know, give me treats and stuff like that. And he's seen it. And
like, isn't that a thing where female prison guards, like they have?
It's certainly a thing. It wasn't a thing with me, but it is certainly a thing.
It just seems like a bad administrative decision.
It is a bad administrative. Why would we do that?
Idea.
Right. Don't hire women to work in prisons.
What a retarded idea.
And so anyway, he saw this, and me and him were in the same housing unit, and he was a very influential and powerful guy. And he went out, and it got back to me that he said something to somebody in the yard, maybe in a different housing unit, that implied that like I was like telling her what was going on in the house or feeding her information or something like that. And that's why she was treating me so, you know, so
favorably.
Good. Yeah, favorably. And in prison, that's not something that you can have people like saying about you. Like it's just not. And so I was furious. And my buddy who told me it, he's like, dude, just like talk it out, whatever. And I was like, no, I'm not talking it out. And mind you, at this point, I hadn't gotten in trouble in a while. I was doing well. I was just in a good spot. And I couldn't get past, like, he just thinks he can say anything because of who he is. Like, fuck this guy. And so I waited for a moment when I knew that most people would be out of the house, because I didn't want to do it while all of his homies were in the house as well, because then I would get jumped immediately. But then I waited until I caught him by himself, and I just beat the shit out of him. Like I didn't say anything. I just went off. And it was bad. It was bad to the point where he actually had repercussions for like letting it happen the way that it did, like with his gang homies or whatever. Like, cause he ended up running from me, and like in a gang, you can't do that. Yeah. Like he was trying to get away from me, and he was hanging on to like a bedpost, and I was like trying to pull him and slam. Like he
must be a bigger guy than you too.
No, he wasn't. We were about the same size.
Okay.
But, so it was bad. And in the prison that I was in at the time, it was a particularly violent prison. So a fist fight is really not a big deal. All they wouldn't send you to the box. They would just send you to different houses. So that's good for him, but really bad for me, because there's Bloods in every house. So they send me to a different house, and I pack my stuff up, and I walk in this house, and I have like all of my possessions are in this one bag. and I walk over to the bed that they tell me that I'm going to be sleeping in. And because I'm in a medium security prison where it's all open, there's no separation. All I did was I asked, could I go to the bathroom? So I go to the bathroom and I called all the bloods in, and I was like, guys, here's what happened. You know, he said this. As you guys know, it's super disrespectful. You can't tolerate it, you know? So I did what I did, but I also understand that there's consequences. You know, I understand that you guys have a code that you live by and this is what you got to do. So like, let's just fight and get it over now. Like, you guys can jump me, whatever. And normally when you do stuff like that in prison, you do it in the bathroom because you might be able to get away with it, right? The guard can't see in the bathroom. So I pulled them in the bathroom. Go ahead, let's do it. They were like, no, we're going to go to the yard and talk to the other homies and see, you know, we just want to know what the situation is. So I'm like, okay. But I knew, like, these guys are fucking cowards. This is why I hate gang members. Like, swear to God. So they go to the yard. I go to my bed, and I don't even unpack my shit. I just leave it there.
Because you know what's going to happen.
I knew. So I go to my bed, and this is just me being arrogant. I fucking went to sleep. Like, I literally purposefully was like, you know what, cool, fuck these dudes. And I laid on my bed and I went to sleep.
How did you even sleep? Like,
dude, I was...
Mark's such a savage.
That's the thing. You know, I'm not a stranger to, you know, to violence with your hands. Like, I've never committed violence with a weapon or anything like that, but I could fight, you know? So, and I know most of these guys can't. So I go to sleep, and the next thing I know, I wake up. Like, something just woke me up, and I was laying on my back, and for some reason, like, I felt something, and then I turned my head, and that's how I got the scar that's on my neck over here, is that there was actually a blade right over my throat when I did that. And so I turned my head, and he cuts under my ear on my neck here, and then next thing I know, I'm getting pushed off the top bunk over into another, you know, square, I guess. And there was 3 guys there with padlocks in tube socks so that they could like whip them. Right. And yeah, that was it, man. They just fucking beat the shit out of me with those padlocks. And to this day, my back is like twisted because I caught one right on my spine. And the reason why I say that was one of the most valuable experiences was because I think that in the society in which we live now, people are so afraid of discomfort, of confrontation. You know, they'll avoid it at all costs. And sometimes I have to share with them, like, man, I've literally risked my life on a principle, you know, to stand up for what I believe in or what I believe to be the right thing. That wasn't the only scenario that I put myself in where, like, it was a principle. And people, like, over the past 2 years, we've seen people just completely forego their own integrity, their own convictions, their own beliefs, their own values, their own morals, out of fear of the discomfort. You know, like, people will get a vaccine because they don't want to lose their job. Like, fuck that job. You know, they keep their kids in school when they don't believe in wearing masks and the damage that it could potentially cause to our kids. You send your kid to school with a fucking mask on anyway, because you God forbid you have to figure out what else you would do if they didn't go to school. And it's like, no, you know, never, ever, ever would I bend on my convictions and my beliefs or my integrity or compromise my own integrity just because of the discomfort that's going to come because of it. And I've done it time and time again. And so that experience was one of the experiences that cemented that in me. You know, I woke up, like, it's so crazy because I also, in that experience, I got cut right down the side of my face. And if you look at my face, you can't see the scar. It's not even there. It's no scar. I don't know how there's not a scar. And I have this one that's really faint over here, but making it through that. And after I got through that, I saw that big homie at the next prison. I saw him, and I thought I was and ironically enough, I was in a housing unit with the big homie of the next prison. So, like, the most powerful guy, he knows what happened with that guy. And I said to myself, fuck, like, it's going to happen all over again. Like, this is going to be really bad. And the big homie that I was in a housing unit with at the next prison, he was not soft. Like, he was not the other guy. Like, this dude would have stabbed me or something. It would have been really bad. And I remember being so nervous when the guy that I beat up arrived, because I'm like, fuck, this is going to spread like wildfire. That night, the real big homie, who wasn't just the big homie at that place, but he was actually a very influential guy, he calls me into the laundry room, which is like not fucking good. Like, it's the only place in any housing unit that is completely secluded and isolated. And I went in there and I was fucking shaking. Like, I was shaking. And we were just talking about it. And he said, you know, the guy's name that I beat up, his name was Santana. You know, Santana just got here. You know, I heard about what happened. And I'm just shaking. And he said, I just want you to know that you're good. And I'm like, man, you know, like seriously, in that moment, like that guy single-handedly decided that I could go home from prison, because in order to, like, that situation would have kept me there longer for sure. You know, weapons would have been involved. It for sure would have, because you don't just beat up the big homie.
So why did he let you off?
Because at that point I had just earned so much like respect by just being me. Like I was completely different than most of the people in there, but I had lived both lives, you know, and I had so much conviction with who I was and the direction I was headed that like people started to respect it. Like, it was the craziest feeling. Like, I feel like whenever you want to make a drastic lifestyle transformation or a change, and the number one reason why most people never successfully do that is because in the beginning, when you're trying to let go of who you were and become who you want to be, you go through this period that I describe as social isolation. So for me, the way that it looked was I went from being the guy that controlled all the drugs, all the gambling, to now I don't have any of that stuff. And so all the people, all of the guys that were my friends, we don't have anything in common anymore. Like, we don't have anything in common anymore. And then the people who were going to be my new friends, they didn't trust me yet. They hadn't yet accepted me. And so there's this long period where your old friends aren't your friends anymore and your new friends haven't developed yet. And so you are more alone than you've ever been in your entire life. Like, it is almost an unbearable loneliness, because I feel like people crave a sense of belonging and you just don't have that. You don't have it. And so it's so easy in that period of time to get pulled back to where you were, to get, you know, peer pressure or just temptation or loneliness or whatever. People usually regress back because your old friends will almost always accept you back. Like, misery loves company. Well, I had so much conviction going through that phase that eventually what happened was that guys started coming out of the woodwork. They would come to me in private and be like, hey man, I want to change my life too. Like, you know, can you help me? Like, where do I start? And one thing at a time, I became so influential, and even the like gangsters started to respect it. They started to treat me differently. Guys would come to the house and, you know, a little bullshit that happens every day in prison, and they'd be like, hey, don't fucking mess with him. You know, like, seriously, it was crazy. And so at that point, the big homie, the real big homie, he kind of just, he liked me. He liked me because I had so much conviction with who I was and what I was trying to do. I didn't want no trouble. But, and that's the thing, when you put off that, like, you want trouble will find you. Mm-hmm. But when you put off that you don't want any problems, he knew, like, I don't want any problems, but like, if it's a problem, like, we can do it, you know? And I think that that's one of the things that is missing, not only that was missing in there, but missing in society these days. It's like, you just have to be prepared to take it wherever you need to take it to stand on what you believe in.
This reminds me a lot about what we were talking about with William Thomas, the guy who pretends to be a woman at UPenn and I don't know if you heard the Ncaa Championship and all that.
This is crazy.
It's crazy. What's crazy to me is that we shared a clip of one of our last episodes where I said, this is all your fault. All of the parents, the coaches, even the swimmers, you're participating in this charade and you're allowing it to continue. And then you somehow get mad that William Thomas wins. And then a lot of people commented and said, well, these girls could lose their scholarships. Yeah, no shit. You can lose your scholarship. Like, I'm sorry, pardon my French, all the moms and who are watching, but fuck your scholarship.
Yeah.
Like, and this is why I'm like, you're so right. People in this country and our culture, we're so weak and we're not willing to sacrifice anything. And then they have the audacity to sit back and complain because some dickhead like William Thomas is getting up on stage and stealing medals. It's like, you're afraid that your daughter's going to lose a year of scholarship, or maybe she'll have to drop out of UPenn. Like, what's the price that you're willing to pay here?
Well, the sad part is they don't even realize, they don't have the foresight to know that they're incurring an even deeper discomfort. Like you're incurring.
That's right.
That's what's inevitable. It's crazy. Matt and I had to learn this lesson in prison, and it's so applicable to life and what we're going through in this country. So in prison, if the first time that somebody tries you, you have to fucking respond default aggressive. You have to, because if you don't, like we use the example of the microwave. Every housing unit has one microwave. There's usually a line because there's 60 guys in a housing unit, and you just get in line for the microwave. You want to heat up your coffee, you want to heat up whatever, a meal or something. So let's say I let you just jump right in front of me in the microwave. Okay, not a big deal. In society, we give people the benefit of the doubt. Oh, maybe he's in a rush or whatever. In prison, you can't do that because there's the phone, let's say. Every housing unit has 4 phones. But phone time is like a fucking hot commodity. Like everybody wants to be able to talk to their people. And so if I let you jump in front of me in the microwave, you can bet your ass that somebody is going to try me again, but just a little bit more severe. Like the microwave, not a big deal. Okay, maybe they take my phone time. All right, well now I'm frustrated. What do I do? Okay, well it's going to continue to escalate until you're somebody's bitch. Like that's the truth. It's going to continue to escalate until you're being extorted and taken advantage of in a number of different ways, because they just take an inch and they take another inch and they take another inch and they take another inch. And criminals, we know that game, and what I think most people in society don't realize is that our government does that with us, or, just in a number of different areas of life. I won't even make it government thing, but they take an inch and we let them do that, and we don't respond default aggressive. Well, then they take another inch,
right.
And then they take another inch, and then they take another inch. And that's what we've seen is like this, feminism movement, or the whatever, or even the racial discussion, and in every single area you look and you can trace it back to like when they took that first inch, right? And in what I think most people don't realize is that if you jump in front of me in the microwave, all it takes is for me to be like, hey man, I'm next. I got you though. I'll tell you when I'm out. But then you take my phone time. Okay. Getting your phone time back is going to require a more aggressive response. Okay. Then somebody, let's say your family sends you in some money for commission or commissary, commissary. Well, somebody takes your commissary. It's going to require now a violent response, right? So in the beginning, if you stop it right immediately, it requires the least aggressive response,
the least effort
to check it, right? But as they continue to take 1 inch, another inch, eventually you're in a spot where you got to take somebody's life, because that's the severity of their transgression.
Is an attempt to stop it seen equal to actually stopping it? Like, let's say, I'm new, right? Mm-hmm. You jump in front of line of me, right? Mm-hmm. And I at least try to stop you, or I at least try to check you. It doesn't work out. I might get, fucked up a little bit. Is that seen as me still trying to check you? Kind of like a respect thing?
That's a great question. Dude, somebody jumps in front of you and they're like, fuck you. And you guys get into an altercation right there and you get beat up. Right. Doesn't matter. They won't try.
You stood up for yourself.
You stood up for yourself.
Okay.
So but in society, it's the same thing.
Nobody does it
with the masks.
Nobody does it
with the masks. It's like that was the first inch.
It's right. Yes.
And it's no. I'm not wearing a fucking mask. Like I'm not gonna wear it. And if you want to wear it, cool. I won't make fun of you. And that's serious. Like I'm not gonna judge you. I think it's idiotic. But do you whatever makes you feel better, but I'm not wearing a mask. And that's all it would have taken. But then it's just another inch. And then like vaccines wouldn't even be a conversation.
That's right.
It wouldn't even be a conversation, but now they are. And now they're being, mandated in certain areas. And now vaccine passports is a conversation. That shit shouldn't even be a conversation right now.
That's right.
Because we could have said, no, I'm not wearing it. Oh,
they didn't check my wife.
That 8-minute video that you shared, that's what I was talking about. Is like when somebody tells me, hey man, it's just a mask. Like I get so offended at that because it reminds me of being in prison. It reminds me that I'm not in control. I'm not making my own decisions now, right? Like I'm not state property anymore. You guys don't know what it feels like to be state property. I do. And that's what the fuck it feels like, is that you have to do this. Hey man, it's just a mask. Do it. No, fuck you. Okay. It's my decision. And when you give up that autonomy, if you will, it's just like me letting him go in front of me in the microwave. Like I know that is not the last straw. Like I know it's not, so I won't give you that first straw. Like it's instilled in me because of my own life experiences, and I wish that I could just give that to other people because it's so much easier to stop it early than it is to stop it later. But even at this point, I'll do fucking anything. Like I'm willing to take it there, you know, and it's because I know that living I was thinking about this when I was running last night. Most people are just alive. Like they just allow their life to be dictated by circumstance and by the government and by other people. That's not living. That to me, that's no way to live. And for me, living is worth dying for. You know, that's what I was thinking about when I was running last night. And that's what I'm talking about is you're not really living your life. You're letting your life be dictated by circumstance and other people. If you want to live, you have to decide, who are you? What do you believe in? What are your values? What does being a man or woman of integrity look like, or, you know, sound like to you? And then you have to be undeviatingly committed to that, regardless of the consequences. That's what living is.
Yeah, dude. People are too comfortable. I feel like if this was a couple centuries ago, this whole William Thomas thing wouldn't have happened, only because an actual woman on the team would have been like, dude, you've insulted my honor by making all of us look like a clown. We're having a duel. And he would have had to fucking accept that duel and accept the consequences of what happens from that duel. And then life would have went on. Remember when we talked about this, like back in the beginning of when maybe like episode 5 or 6, when I was talking about, I wish people could just fight with each other based on the disagreements, because a lot of people.
I love that episode.
Yeah.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I think we were talking about it before.
So
you
did it.
Yeah.
We did.
So the whole premise of that is, listen, suppose you get into a fight online over some, you know, stupid disagreement. Let's say it's on masks or something like that. And it's just a tired back and forth. Nothing gets changed, whatever. I want to be like, listen, you believe in this so much, you want to wear a mask so much, why don't you fight me over it?
I would love it. I mean, I don't know.
But then that's the thing is, people who talk tough and act tough, I feel like if they're not presented with any sort of danger to their physical well-being, they're just too comfortable to just not take it seriously enough. So you can argue with a stranger online forever.
No consequences.
Because it's so comfortable.
It is.
I could sit here and I can do it.
My brother and I were having a conversation similar the other day, and he just literally interrupted me. I said, people will just do this. And he said, yeah, because they never been punched in their shit before, you know? And that's the truth. It's really the truth. I think the Leah Thomas thing is so, that's why I was asking you about ideological subversion, because that first stage of demoralization and really just confusing people, he talks about in that video, presenting them with factual information. They still are unable to really draw any sensible conclusions. And I feel like we're in a spot right now where I don't know how we got here, but how are we arguing over things that are common sense? Like I put a poll on my story the other day, like, hey, is this progress or is this wrong? And fucking everybody says it's wrong.
Obviously.
And I'm like, but
it's easy to do that in an anonymous poll.
It is. It's so easy to do that in an anonymous poll. And it's like those girls, like, I agree with you. Those girls should not have swam.
No. And you know how we got here? You talk about the first inch. These are my pronouns, she, her. No. Long time ago, we should have never entertained this fantasy that a guy with a dick could grow his hair out, put on a dress, and demand that you call him she, her, whether it's in a setting at work, whether it's just a friend, whatever it is. We should have drawn the line then and there and said, no, We are not playing into this game that denies objective reality, that denies biological sex. The term, first of all, biological sex isn't even a term. It's your sex. Biological male, biological woman, it doesn't matter.
It's your sex.
There's
I
no
don't
other
say biological.
No.
There's no other kind of male. There's no biological male or it's just male. That's it. And so that first inch was people asking us to use their preferred pronouns. Just what's the difference to you? It doesn't bother you at all. It doesn't change your life at all if you just respect them and their pronouns.
No, it makes me a fucking liar.
It makes me a liar. It makes me sound like a fucking lunatic because that's a man acting like a woman. And then you end up with these athletes, like people who don't understand what it means to be fit, to be an athlete. These are Division I swimmers. Do you have any idea the level of sacrifice and the hours and hours they put in that pool?
How often are these girls training?
Oh my gosh.
Like probably 5 hours a day.
Oh, they
Yeah.
you know, they're up at
literally
5.
for the last 10 years of their life.
Literally, it is their entire life. Like people who fat, weak Americans who sit on their ass all day long, and maybe you're like, the most they'll do is like go to the gym and get on the elliptical for like 10 minutes a month. They have no idea the level. Yeah, but you golf, so like,
Not much.
Golf is not a physical sport.
Hold on. I'm going to fight back on that just because of the walking involved. If you
That's what I was
walk
gonna
while
say.
playing golf, you walk
Instead of
anywhere
the
between
cart.
like 2 and 4 miles. Yeah, per
but like
run, yeah.
most people, 90% of the people who don't do anything, they have no idea the level of sacrifice that those girls had to put in to become a Division I athlete. And so they don't think it's a big deal when some guy comes in and wrecks it all. But it all started because we were just going to use people's preferred pronouns.
He's
and now
not beating
here we
them
are.
by that much.
Oh,
though.
stop it. And all that aside, okay, even I like to give people the benefit of the doubt here in that they really don't understand what it took for those girls to get into that race, right? But even aside from that, let's say there's one transgender athlete for every 10,000 non-transgender athletes. Okay. There is no perfect solution. I think that everybody can agree on that. So like in an imperfect situation, and we have to come up with something that is admittedly imperfect, okay, that doesn't accommodate everybody. You don't dictate policy and rules for the one for the sake of the 10,000.
Right.
If it's 1 in 10,000, why are we making rules to comfort the 1 and discomfort the 10,000? Like in any, in the history of the world, it's always do the most good for the most amount of people. That's how you dictate policy and law or rule. So
Always.
It's crazy to me that people can't see that. Like, why would we do that? It's just like the mask people.
Yeah.
You want everybody to wear a mask to make you feel comfortable. If you're really that uncomfortable, stay the fuck home.
Yeah.
We live in a world today where you can get your groceries delivered, everything. Don't fucking ask me to wear my mask to make you feel comfortable. It's the same exact situation anywhere you look. And then the other thing that really bothers me about the people, the letter people, the alphabet people, like Dave Chappelle calls them, but
Yeah, that's right.
which I shouldn't bring up Dave. They hate Dave. But
right.
the other thing that really bothers me is the same thing about it. Minority populations have done this as well, is that they just want to be catered to. Like, I'm like a live and let live kind of person. Like, I truly don't care how you live your life, but like, stop. Like, they want exceptions to be made, and they want they want everybody to like live around them.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating. Like, I don't want to bother you, but I also just don't want you to bother me. And I feel like me growing up, the way that I did, like black people, man, they get on my nerves. I ain't gonna lie. They get on my nerves because they're the same way. It's this like victim mentality, this poor me.
Entitlement.
And it turns into entitlement. Exactly. And it's so frustrating because it just keeps them where they're at. And this different movement, I don't even know what to call it, but this different movement is different, but there is that same entitlement where they just want the whole world to cater to them.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, especially trans, like you made that decision. Like every decision in life has consequences. And one of the consequences should just be that if you go from being a man to a woman, you cannot compete in women's sports at the highest level. Like that's just one of the consequences.
It's like you don't see people who are in a wheelchair. I looked up the stats once. There's statistically more people in a wheelchair than there are trans people in the country, obviously.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, but you don't see any disabled person in a wheelchair demanding that we stop calling sidewalks because they can't walk on them. So it's offensive to them. Like, have you ever heard a disabled person say that it's offensive to call a sidewalk? We're going to call it like, I don't know what else you could call it, but you don't even see disabled people demanding this kind of change of language.
So here's a question, because I've heard this brought up. Do you then, and this just gets so, it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper to the point where I don't care, but I want to know your opinion on it. And your opinion, I want to ask two athletes about this. Is there a point in which you just create an open category? So like not men's sports, not female sports, not necessarily mixed, but just open. Whoever wants to compete in this category can compete in this category.
I'll let him answer first.
It's preferable to what you're doing now. I think 100%. Like I'm not opposed to those people living their life. Like that's not what I want. It's not my goal. But I just understand, like Gina was saying, the sacrifice that those women made to get to where they're at. I am adamantly opposed to taking that opportunity away from them and letting a man compete against them.
I agree.
So if that is the solution,
I also don't want to see grown men, knocking out women's eye sockets in MMA either.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. Like if there was an open class or an open what is it called? A division or something like that, where these women know, like, okay, you're competing against other men here. This is an open division, whatever. But you can't even really do things by weight class. Because even if you had an 110 pound, see, I wrestled in high school. I wrestled in the 96 pound weight class, right? Whatever. So, sorry. But if I was wrestling against a 96 pound woman, it would be still completely different.
Totally different.
That's what I was trying to tell somebody online. This is the equivalent of an athlete, let's say a female, taking anabolic steroids for the first 20 years of her life, getting clean, and then 1 year later competing against women. Like, and it's not even, that's not even a fair comparison. No. Like, it is insane the contribution that the male hormones have made to this person's development, their physical development for the first 20 years of their life. You can't undo that. I don't care how many hormone suppressors you take. You can't undo the influence that it had on their development.
Also,
and that's go
hormones are just the tip of the iceberg. Like, hormones are just like a small part of it. We're talking about the way that men are built, like your waist, your waist to hip ratio, your shoulder to waist ratio is much different than women's. Your wingspan is much longer. You have thicker skin. You have a larger heart. You have larger lungs. Your anaerobic capacity is greater. You have a larger brain. Like even down to how women retain water. We must retain water because the whole biological purpose of a female is to reproduce. Sorry, but that's how it is. And so we retain water and fat in our midsection much differently than men do. I mean, hormones. This is why people are so retarded. Your hormones play. It's like this much of a difference. It's because there's so many other things when it comes to the anatomy of men and women.
So here's a question, okay? Because you talk about like the hormone suppression. Still, in any sort of sporting oversight committee like the NCAA, if there are rules against chemical enhancements or enhancements, would you say is something, you are still chemically altering your body in order to, I don't know, he's clearly not taking them to perform at a certain level, but he's taking them to be another person, I guess. I don't know. I'm not all up on the science about it, but it just seems like if you are ingesting chemicals, you shouldn't be able to compete. Yeah. Regardless of the chemicals.
It's the NCAA's fault for like allowing that. But I still think like, and again, just life. I try not to worry about the things that I can't control.
People just don't want, like, they don't want anxiety. They don't want stress in their lives. So the parents, I mean, if it was my daughter, I'd be like, what the fuck? Are you kidding me? How are you letting this happen?
There's no way that those parents are not upset. There's no way.
I think the parents, I honestly think that those parents they're mad and they're probably heartbroken, but they care way too much about their social status.
About public opinion.
Yes, they do. They do.
And it's so crazy because the mainstream media will have you believe that most people agree with that.
Yeah.
But I cannot fathom it. I cannot wrap my mind around the idea that most people are okay with that.
It's like, I think about, like, when I did my jiu-jitsu competition, I think about me showing up to the mat and knowing that there's a guy about to fight me. Like,
Oh, wait, you were up against guys?
Well, you know what I mean? Like, if I went to compete for
if
I did.
Okay, I thought you said you did.
Oh, no. If I went to
men
compete,
will train you.
What's that?
Men will train you, but they're not trying to.
No. They're not actually
beat
trying to
you.
get. That's like the number one thing when you teach a guy how to spar. Like there's some women in class, like they like have a talk. Yeah. They're like, listen, you're about to like spar with this woman. And like most of the time, if you're a male white belt, like it will like be supervised if you're going to spar with a woman. You know what I mean? Like when I started training with jiu-jitsu, like Adriano would approve like who I would roll with, like knowing that some men can like control their strength more than others. But I think about if I went to show up to that jiu-jitsu competition, if I knew that I was about to fight a man, like just knowing that feeling. And then I think about my daughter, because hopefully my daughter's going to love jiu-jitsu the way that her parents do. If I was about to bring my daughter to a jiu-jitsu competition and there was a guy there who was about to be on the mat with her, that place would be burnt. I'm sorry we're cursing in this episode, but that place would be burnt to the fucking ground. Can you imagine my husband if we showed up and we were going to put our daughter on a mat and there was a guy standing on the other side of her? Oh my gosh, these parents are such cowards.
Just like a straight up guy or someone saying that he's trans?
Doesn't even matter. It's a guy.
It's the same.
It's a fucking guy.
No. But I'm saying like under the illusion of like if they just allowed like mixed gender jiu-jitsu, or this was a women's jiu-jitsu competition, and then you're like, wait, why is that guy there? And
yeah,
like,
if it's a women's jiu-jitsu competition and a trans woman. I don't even want to use these terms anymore. I refuse to even use the term trans woman or biological male because it's male or it's female and that's it. So going back to your question, whether there should be an open category, my answer is no. You know why? Because you're either a male or you're a female. And I don't want to hear the answer, what about the intersex people? That's such a small percentage. Mm-hmm. I don't even know let's just take a guess and say it's like 1% of people are born intersex, right? It's such a rare thing. No, there should be no open categories because you're either a man or you're a woman and that's it. And the reason why I don't want open categories is because what it does is it acknowledges the mental illness. It acknowledges the fantasy that you can pretend to be a man or you can pretend to be a woman when you were born a man or a woman. Do you know what I mean? So I don't even want to play. I don't want our society to play into this fantasy. I don't want to cater to this mental illness. If you have schizophrenia, I truly feel bad for you. If you have gender dysphoria, I truly feel bad for you. But society is not going to rebuild itself and play along with your fantasy. Like somebody who has schizophrenia, I'm not going to pretend that you see a monkey on the wall when there's no fucking monkey on the wall. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? And so my answer to that is no. I don't want open categories because you're either a man or you're a woman and that's it.
Yeah. It is.
Sorry we're cursing so much in this episode, guys.
Do you guys normally not curse?
I do.
Oh, yeah,
I've been trying not to because some moms and people have been like, hey, you know, I want to listen to it with my kids in the car.
The Christians.
And
the Christians don't want me to curse. Mike curses too much. She's going to hell.
They don't say that, Mike. They don't like you blaspheming.
No, one comment the other day was, wow, for Christians, you guys sure drop a lot of F-bombs. And I was just like, fuck out of here. I said that back. And I was like, fuck out of here.
Man.
Like, can I tell you something, Mark?
You guys are both Christians?
No, I'm not.
I am. Mike's not.
Are you a believer?
Yes.
Okay, me too.
I fully acknowledge that Jesus Christ existed. I will fully acknowledge that he is the Son of God, but I like other things. I like to mix him in there a little bit.
Well, when I say, are you a believer, I just mean, do you believe in God? I consider myself a believer, but I'm the furthest thing from religious.
I do you like Ram Dass and Alan Watts at all? I figure if you're talking about philosophers.
I don't know. It doesn't ring a bell.
Well, Ram Dass always says to treat everyone as if they're God in drag. I know you're not going to like that.
You say God in drag?
God in drag. And he doesn't mean that God's this drag queen. He means that if everyone is created in God's image, that you would treat everyone as if they were God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I agree with the sentiment that we should treat everyone as
You just don't agree with the way he says it.
So how would you say, like, you found God? Were you always a believer in God?
I think, I mean, I was raised Catholic.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
So I've always, but listen, life is too complex in order for anything to be random.
Yeah.
And I've said this before, and there are people on our Instagram that were having a big discussion over the clip of Gavin saying that he believed in God because of the birth of his daughter. And, you know, they're going back and forth. They're like,
some of the Bible.
we, you know, science, if you guys look at science. And I'm like, listen, you know, if you look inside of our bodies, microbiology, if you look at the machines that are able to transport amino acids and fats and proteins all throughout our bloodstream, like it is so complex. Like our bodies are like mini metropolises and mini automobiles and transport systems. And if you're going to tell me that they just sprung up out of nowhere, I can't believe you, and it's unscientific.
It's even more complex than that.
Right. No, it is. But
infinitely
and
complex.
then when anyone comes back,
one thing goes wrong, you die.
Exactly.
And
that's why I talk about blood. I talk
Crazy.
about blood clotting. There are so many steps involved in order for your blood to clot properly. If one of those steps doesn't happen, you end up bleeding. Okay. So I'll tell people that, and they'll just say, yeah, but you think the world was created in 7 days. I'm like, listen, there is no science in the Bible. There's no science in the Bible. For you to be like, the Bible's unscientific, it makes no scientific claims. But I'm also not a devout Christian or evangelical or someone like that. I love Eastern mysticism. I like Christianity. That's just how that's how I
love
find
Eastern mysticism.
I really do.
I read, when I was in prison, I read all the holy books that I could get my hands. So I read the Quran, I read the Old Testament, the New Testament, I read the Bhagavad Gita.
Bhagavad Gita.
I love the Gita. And
it's very epic.
It is.
It is.
But
it is an epic.
I just had this overwhelming, like, it's all the same. Like I'm like, man, that's all. The only conclusion I could draw is that everybody had experienced or sensed the same thing, and they're all just submitting to it, and that's cool. But if that's the case, well, then I don't want to identify with anyone in particular. I'm just going to take my understanding. And
it feels very blasphemous for me to say something like, I don't want to submit to just Jesus. And I know that's what a lot of Christians will be like, submit to Jesus, submit to God.
They do.
And I'm just like, love Jesus, great guy.
Yeah, that's not blasphemous, but
no. But yeah, but just because I say that, they would think that I'm rejecting Christ, and I'm really not. And what I like to do is I like to sit in reflection. And if I like to have a guided meditation, or if I just like to sit there, if I like to, borrow elements of Buddhism or something like that, I feel like I can do that. I can live this Christ-like life as much as I try to live that sort of life without having to kind of push or try to push other people to it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. What I would want is for people to see how I'm living, see how I'm acting, and be like, oh, that guy's, he seems to be, living somewhat of a Christ-like life or whatever.
That's it.
Without having to.
I've been there.
The guy that I brought up, James Allen, he says that.
Yeah, talk about him.
He says that conduct, that is religion. Is you want to emulate Jesus as closely as you can. And the reason why I really like James Allen is because he believes in moral perfection. Like he believes in the.
Does he believe that humans are inherently good? I don't know if that's something that he would say, because that's sort of like the crux.
I do think that, I feel confident saying that yes, he would argue that. But the most appealing thing to me about him is that he believes in the possibility of attaining moral perfection through mindfulness, through renunciation, and I just, like, to me, I love seemingly impossible things and tasks and challenges, and I do too. Like, logically, when I think about it, I think, man, if I can show up as the best version of me in this moment, well, why couldn't I sustain that? And it's very obviously it's incredibly difficult. And a lot of people would argue that it's impossible, but he believes, and he makes such convincing arguments, and he speaks about it with such conviction, and he is a follower of Christ. But that is the guy for me that in the back of my mind, I'm always like, okay, like that's what I go back to when I'm trying to find enlightenment or just elevate myself in that way. But really the first thing that sparked my belief, or my curiosity anyway, was actually LSD. Like, when I was on LSD, I look around and you can see the energy, and you can feel energy, and it showed me that, like, man, like, the world is much more than I actually.
Did you ever do ayahuasca?
No, we've talked about this before.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Makes you puke. Well, the funny thing about LSD and people like Ram Dass was a contemporary of Timothy Leary. They both went to Harvard together, and they were both kicked out of Harvard together for LSD, like distribution and making LSD.
Oh, really?
And Ram Dass, before he had, I don't want to say an enlightenment, but before he became a guru in his own right, spent a lot of time doing psychedelics, LSD, to the point when, and this is something even George Harrison said, George of the Beatles, he said that once you're able to gain this sort of level of consciousness from just meditation alone, they never needed drugs ever again.
Yes.
So this is coming from your situation where you spent time in solitary confinement. I feel like you would really, really understand the benefits of meditation, of a guided meditation. And just even apart from religions, because I feel like they're in structured religions like Christianity. I mean, you go into church on Sunday and on holidays and stuff like that. And obviously the most devout people are doing it every day. Mm-hmm. But you don't necessarily have to be a devout person to meditate. You can do it 10 minutes per day, or you can do it 30, 45 mm-hmm. minutes. And it's just breathing and stuff like that. And it's not this idea of someone sitting Indian style on a rug and being quiet and doing chanting and stuff like that. I lay down, I put a guided meditation right next to my head, and I just sit in the stillness. And it's like, it's almost a form of psychedelics, because I'm able to see stuff a lot more clear. I'm able to think about things I need to do, and I'm able to become aware of things in a different sort of way.
Well, mine actually looks like the first way you described. Like I do it the way that most people think, sitting Indian style on a hard floor, and it's impressive that you drew those connections. Like, so pre-prison, it was psychedelics. Mm-hmm. It was psychedelics that would give me those spiritual experiences, and I would talk to God, and God would talk to me, and but I speak about this sometimes. There is this lingering just desperation that I deal with every single day. It's because I know that right now I'm not the best I ever was. Like, I'm not even close to the best I could be, but I also know, and the reason why I know that is because I'm not even the best I ever was. And the best I ever was actually when I was in prison. The best I ever felt mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally. And at that point, this is when I came to really truly believe, like, I have an unshakable faith in God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. But at that point I was meditating every single day. I would wake up at 4 a.m. and I would journal first, and then I would meditate for 20, 30 minutes. And like, my mental clarity was, it's an indescribable feeling that I was living with at that time. Like, seriously, I've written one time, I wrote a post about the happiest moment of my life. And it was when I was in prison. I walked outside, and it was just a beautiful day. And I had like one of those experiences that you read about, the old philosophers would write about when they would be in nature or whatever. It was just a beautiful day. The tree looked nice. The sky was blue. And I just was overwhelmed with gratitude. I fucking cried. Like, it was a crazy moment, but I was living in that. And I knew at that point, I would just know things. Like, it's so crazy because it's hard to describe how I felt, but I would wake up, and this is when people would start, like, their level of respect grew infinitely to me. I went from being one of the worst behaved people in prisons to, I literally designed a 12-week course that became mandatory for people to take before they went home if they wanted to get their good time. Like, the transformation that I went through was insane. And then all the trouble, my disciplinary record, there's no way I should have got out of prison early. Like, I went to prison with a 4-year sentence, and I ended up doing 5.5 years because I literally got rearrested in prison for doing things. And then they send me home early. They let me get parole. And it was just like, so many good things started happening. I had this calm all the time. I had this knowing, like, I had no worries, no stress. And I credit it 100% to striving every day for moral perfection, to show up as the best version of me on a moment to moment basis, not even on a day-to-day basis, but just moment to moment. And meditating every day, like the level of mindfulness that I had. I reached a level of mindfulness, and you might like this, where I started by renouncing certain things. So I'm a huge advocate of renunciation if you want to take this spiritual journey, or even just try to be the best version of yourself. A lot of times it's not about adding, it's about taking away. And I started by taking away like sweets, and I cleaned up my diet. And then I started by, taking away entertainment, because I realized that, like, media and anything that you put into your brain influences your thought process and who you are. So I stopped watching TV, I stopped listening to music, and I stopped reading anything that wasn't like in line with what I was trying to read. So it became all nonfiction or philosophy. And then I got to the point where I wanted to renounce my opinion. Like, this is how deep I was. I wanted to renounce my opinion and realize, like, what am I saying that's the truth? What am I saying that is an objective truth? And what am I saying that is a subjective truth? And so, like, I got so far that, like, I wouldn't speak as much. I would stop and listen. Like, I was enlightened at that point. And when I came home from prison, I regressed, and I've never been able to get back there. But it's interesting because you brought up prison and you drew that correlation and meditation, and you brought up meditation. I didn't, but like, that is the path that I walked to get to the point where I was like, I really felt like I was just a servant at that point of God. And that's how I got to where I'm at now. Is, you know me, Gina, as somebody that is desperate. Like, I live with this sense of urgency every single day to just help as many people as I can. I want to inspire, I want to teach, I want to learn, I want to grow, but it's about people for me at this point. And it was because of that period of my life.
Do you meditate?
Yeah. No, I pray. I used to meditate.
Okay. Prayer is similar, I think.
Prayer is great.
Prayer is great.
Do you think she'd benefit from meditation?
I did it for years.
But I'm not going to push my strategies.
I did it for years.
Yeah.
I did it for years.
Yeah,
I was exactly where you are for a long time.
Gina, have you ever talked about your story and like where you were before you talked about it on the show?
Look, this is, if we want to talk about it, I was very much in a place where...
Similar place as me.
I grew up Christian, and I got to a point in my life where I was thinking, well, maybe there's something from everything, right? Maybe we can pick, there's a lot to learn from a lot of different things. But I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'm at a point where I've come back to, I came back to God. I came back to my Christian faith. And I really learned that it's unfortunate, but if you believe in Jesus, and if you're a Christian, if you accept Christ as a son of God who came to this earth, the only way that you can improve yourself morally is through the sanctification and the salvation that Christ offers. And the thing about Christianity, and it's extremely hard to accept, and it was very humbling for me to accept as somebody who was spiritual for a long time, who did a lot of meditation. I did a lot of plant medicine. I was, like a universalist, Unitarian universalist, in the sense that I pulled value and morals from a lot of different spirituality practices and religions. It was very humbling for me to realize that there's only one way.
Yeah.
There's only one way.
But that structure is good, and that structure works for you. Just like, and even if you evolved from a different place and got to where you are now, and if that's working, that's great. And I think if a lot more people recognize that whatever works for a person, and if they do lead a moral life, a good life, and they treat others, as they, golden rule, then that's fine. But where we disagree on is just that right now, I don't like just the one thing. And that might just be a lack of discipline in me. It might be a lack of structure. But as it is, I even feel good talking about it.
I think it comes down to conduct. Like I really do. And I'm a huge fan of the Bible. And I believe in Jesus and all those things. But I really do. I think that all that matters, because that's where I struggle with Christianity, is they'll say all that matters is that you accept Christ.
But
no, that's not all that matters.
That's not all that matters.
That's not all that matters.
But that's not, if Christians say that, that's not true, because that's not what it is.
But a lot of them do. And there is a widespread misunderstanding and misrepresentation of Christianity right now. Like, a lot of people think that just because they go to church every Sunday,
that's the progressive.
That's
the progressive Christianity, is that all that matters is that you accept Christ and that's it. Yeah, because that's not. But
I think that conduct should come first, and like, even me as somebody that I don't necessarily identify as a Christian per se. Like, Jesus is the standard for me. Like, and that's what I strive to emulate every single day. And I think that it comes down to conduct and
becoming Christ-like. That's
exactly.
That's the thing. Look, one thing that we talk about a lot that I think we can all agree on is that my pastor said this on his podcast, and he'll come on and talk about this too. At the end of the day, people are going to look at you and judge you not by what you say and not by what you say you believe, but by the way that you treat your wife, by whether you take out the trash, by the way that you treat the unruly kid at church or the unruly kid at school.
If you bring the shopping cart
that's
back.
my problem,
If
though.
you bring the shopping cart back, it's all of these things. And so that's why I totally understand what you're saying. And that's what pushed me away from Christianity for so long, is because it would make me so mad. And Mike, you say this too. It would make me so mad how Christians, they would just say, well, I'm Christian, I believe in Christ, and that's it. But then they would live their life in such an unattractive, ugly way.
Yeah.
And that is the struggle. And I get that. That is something that is infuriating. It's very, very difficult to see.
I couldn't baptize my daughter, and I thought about this even up until recently. I was like, babe, you know what? We should probably get her baptized. And she said, listen, if you're gonna baptize her, you better have her learning. You better have her involved in this faith. You can't just baptize her just to baptize her.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I'd be doing her a disservice if I just baptized her and never went to church or never made an effort to actually get her involved in it. So
And I just think about, like, what about the people who aren't exposed, or aren't educated, or aren't informed? They grow up and they're taught a different faith. Like, that's why I always say conduct comes first, because, like, I just can't imagine a God not accepting somebody who lived their life the right way for not discovering him, you know?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
How genuine were the conversions of people in prisons? Because you always see it in the movies, like, the person finds God and becomes super devout, and then used to be incredibly violent, but now is totally changed. Is that just a movie cliche, or is a lot of that real?
No, I think that what people don't see and what the movies don't show is that it's safety, it's protection. So, like, in prison, when you if you're Rastafarian, or if you're Christian, or if you're Muslim, or whatever you are, they protect their own. And there's
just another gang.
They're another gang. That's 100%. That's it. They're another gang. And some people do I suppose really change through finding God, and that's good, but it's very few and far between. I mean, I know a number of them, and all of them went back to their lifestyle when they came home. So yeah. I mean, it didn't affect any real or lasting change. It is just a way to stay safe.
Dude, I have this what do they say? What illegitimate fear? Is that what they call it? What a phobia is? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is a phobia an illegitimate fear?
Yeah.
Or just an exaggerated fear? I have an exaggerated fear of going to prison. I don't know why. I think about it all the time.
I have an exaggerated fear of getting framed for a crime that I didn't do and then going to prison.
Really?
I think about it all the time.
It's been exacerbated by having a child now.
Yeah.
Because I imagine getting sentenced and looking back and just seeing never being allowed to see them in that context.
That's so
anymore.
weird. I think about that. I think about that all the time.
I think about it all the time.
I think about it all the time.
It's hard too, because I have I used to have one. It's less now, but I used to have a very hairline trigger as far as aggression.
Yeah.
So just even in the car with road rage, it's gotten better, but it used to be bad before, to the way that you'd almost black out and my wife would have to be kind of snap me out of it, because I can make such a stupid decision in such a small amount of time and have that taken away. And I think about that all the time. Conduct yourself as best as you can every day, because the last thing you want is to get taken away from that.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
I mean, it's scarier for men, because men are much more likely to go to prison than women are.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, statistically. I mean, that's why when you hear women say that we live in a patriarchal society, I mean, no.
Stop
I mean, men have it worse. Men are more likely to be homeless, file for bankruptcy, commit suicide, go to prison.
I've also found the moral compass in prison astounding when it comes to people who are children. You could be in there for murder. You could be in there for raping somebody. You could be in there for swindling millions off of people, but you're not going to get anything. As if you hurt a child, if you're a pedophile, if you killed a child, people in prison, they will kill you for that, right?
Yeah.
It's insane. It's sort of
they won't
everybody
kill you, but you'll.
But there are situations where that'll happen. But is the animus that much for people who are children in prison?
I think that it's just easy targets. I think
is that another movie cliche?
Yeah. Well, no, that's real. But I think in every environment there are, there's predators and there's prey. And I think that it's very easily.
So the child molesters, they they would think of themselves as predators up until they get into prison. They're like, oh, I'm actually...
And even in that scenario, that is a movie cliche. Guys for sure don't like those guys, but the truth is, if those dudes are tough, like, it's the same. The overwhelming governing law is the one that I shared before.
Right.
Somebody tries you, you know, you just don't stand it, you don't tolerate it. But those guys tend to have a really meek mindset and mentality and approach,
because they prey on weaker people anyway.
Because they prey on weak people.
That movie cliche is just like, you know, as soon as that everyone knows that guy's a pedophile, everyone's like,
right.
And I haven't even, dude. When I first got to prison, I thought that was a case, and I can't stand those people, you know, and so I fit right in. I was the guy.
Yeah.
But then I would see like people hanging out with them and talking to them and stuff like that, and it's like, you motherfuckers are frauds, you know. But it wasn't them; it was the movies that made me believe that.
There was there's a great interview, and I mean, there's a clip of this woman being led out of the courthouse, and someone was like, "How does it feel? How did it feel to kill that guy?" And she was like, "Great, he was a pedophile. He got it coming." And then there's another interview of this guy who is, I guess, a bunkmate with this one guy who was in. And the other dude never asked him what he was in for, but the other guy just started talking and said that he, you know, was in there for hurting little girls or something like that. And the guy was just like, I couldn't take it. He just kept on talking about it. So what I did is I just grabbed a shoelace and I choked him to death. Mm-hmm. I couldn't hear him talk about hurting little kids anymore. And I was
I mean, that's for sure a thing. I mean, it happens. But I don't think it's as extreme as the movies makes it seem. For sure.
One thing, because we got to wrap up soon, but one thing I wanted to ask you that we've talked about before, you've told me that there's this idea that when someone comes out of prison, it's extremely difficult for them to not only assimilate into everyday life, but to get a job and to find professional success. Yeah. And you said to me once that that's not true.
Yeah, it's not true. Granted, a lot of guys don't have any valuable experience. A lot of guys are lacking in education. They're not specialists in anything per se. But I also remember Elon Musk tweeting that the average street drug dealer, you know, is knows more about how to run a business than a college graduate at this point. But I think that the overwhelming truth and reality of that situation is that guys, prison just creates better criminals. You know, it just, guys have no interest in changing or you know, walking a different path, and so they're unprepared when they come home. But for me, it just wasn't the case. Like, all the stuff that you would need in order to become more employable is available to you. They force you to learn a trade, and you can pick. It's not just a trade that they pick. You can pick. Like, I got a certification in horticulture because I knew that I wasn't going to work a trade when I came home anyway, and I just wanted to know how to grow weed better at that point. But I got a certification. There was masonry, there was carpentry, there was a number of different welding. Like, you get paid good as a welder, so that you can learn a trade, and then not only that, you can get books and reading material and all that stuff. There's a library. So like, I learned a lot about, let's say, I was super into psychology for a long time. And then I got into business books, and then I got into philosophy, and then I got into, I wanted to come home and get into the fitness space. So I read about personal training, and I literally ordered all the material that I would need in order to pass my personal training certification while I was still in prison. I came home and took the certification test 2 weeks later because I had already prepared to take it. And now I'm so my point is, like, while they're in there, guys are just so preoccupied with being cool and fitting in. Like, social pressure and you know, people have such a strong predilection for conformity. It distracts them from what's important. And so I just don't buy into that at all. I think that it's a decision. And if you want to be employable, all of the tools, resources, and information that you would need in order to become more employable is available. And then even still, if you're talking getting a baseline job of like Walmart or, you know, or stocking shelves at a grocery store or whatever, like, that stuff is easy. Like, I know for sure, but I came home and started a business right away. I had multiple job offers, within the first 6 months of people just because of my conduct. And it just goes back to the previous conversation. So I don't buy into it at all. I really don't. I think that that's a bunch of horseshit. It's another example of the victim mentality that I was talking about before. It just infuriates me. Nobody's going to, like, that's the thing, is they expect that somebody's going to come and give them a job. Like, nobody's going to give you a job. Nobody's going to make you learn new skills or trades or anything like that. Like, you just have to want to go do it. And it's not just people coming out of prison. It's everybody, thinks that the success is just going to be handed to them. Like, it's not. So yeah, I mean, the short answer is just no. I think that that's horseshit. I think anybody, no matter what your life experience is, no matter what your background, like, you can literally do anything that you're willing to sacrifice and work for. Like, when I came home, I got involved with the same company that you and I both share in common, and I was a remote employee of sorts, or a sales rep of sorts for a nutritional supplement company. And I was with them for probably 6 months. And then I got on Instagram, I started posting more, and it was all just this surface level shit. Cause at this point I was too afraid to share that I had been in prison. So like, I didn't, like, when you're trying to hide who you are, you don't have anything to talk about other than surface level shit. So I would just post workouts and stuff. And I guess my coach of sorts, she would always push me, like, Mark, if you actually want to connect with people on social media, you got to share like a little bit about your life and who you are and stuff like that. And she just didn't understand why I would only talk about fitness and nutrition. And so one day I called her and I said, hey, like, it was really eating at me. Like, I wanted to share, but I was afraid that everybody that I had built relationships with and everybody that knew me at this point as this new version of me, they didn't know the other version of me. And I was afraid that they were going to leave my life. I was afraid I was going to get, exiled from the company and all kinds of things. And so I called her first and I said, hey, this is the situation. I was in prison. I just came home from prison. And at this point I owned a gym. I was doing really well. I was making 6 figures, or at least projected 6 figures every month. And
wait, what?
Yeah. I came home and I started a business, and
I'm telling you that I hope I can say this, but the women were paying, he opened up a women's gym. They're paying like $700 a month
to train there.
And I
was capped out
as a one-on-one like trainer, or just to come to the gym.
Just to come to the gym.
Yeah.
Isn't that insane?
I marketed it in a unique way, but and they got individual attention, but anyway, so I was doing really well. I was making great money. And so all she said, I said, hey, I've been in prison. And all she said was, Mark, how the fuck did you accomplish so much in such a short amount of time? She completely disregarded that I just told you that I'd been in prison. Her only response was just, how did you do all of this in such a short amount of time? And at the time, it never occurred to me that I operated any differently than anybody else. And so it kind of caught me off guard. I'm like, what do you mean? My intuitive response is what I said. I said, well, I just don't waste any days. Like every day I wake up and I ask myself, what can I do today? And I just do it. And one day at a time, and so what I would say to somebody coming home from prison, what I would say to somebody getting out of college, what I would say to somebody who just graduated from high school or got out of the county or rehab or anything, what I would say to the person that's 35, that's been at their job for 10 years and is miserable is ask yourself, okay, what do I want my life to look like in a year or 5 years, or what is ideal? And then ask yourself, okay, what can I do today? What can I do? Even if you just chip away at it, that is what has enabled me to get to where I'm at. That is what I know a lot of very successful people. I know a lot of 7-figure earners, and I'm friends with them on a personal level. And they just operate with a sense of urgency every day. Like every day is an opportunity to get closer to where you want to be. And it doesn't even matter that you don't know the end destination. It only matters like, okay, this is the direction I got to go. Like a super, super simple example is like, okay, if you want to be in shape, okay, well, what can I do today? Well, you can move a little bit. You can prioritize drinking some water. You can,
take vitamins.
Ask somebody for some, take your vitamins. You can ask somebody for some advice on how your diet should look. Okay, very simple things. But if you just do that today, at the end of the day, you get to go to sleep. And when you lay your head on that pillow, you know that you did everything that you could, or at least you moved a little bit closer to that best version of you, or to that best version of your life. And that's how I did it. That's how I did it. And she couldn't wrap her mind around it. And I think that prison gave me that. Because in prison, I would get so frustrated because I would sit there and I would daydream all day about what I would do today if I could. Like, what would I do? What would I be doing right now if I could? And I want to build this business and I want to do this. And by the way, I did my 5-year plan in 1 year. I did. My 5-year plan was to own a gym, massage therapy studio, yoga studio.
And you did all that within your first year of getting out of prison.
Yeah. But
savage.
But I would look at society and I realized that, man, we live our lives Monday through Thursday, and then Friday rolls around and we start to get, loose and relaxed. And then we have this thing that we fucking invented called the weekend. And it's like, just because we call it Saturday, it's Saturday. Okay. So it doesn't mean anything. The opportunity presented on Saturday is somehow different than the opportunity you got presented on Tuesday. And so we just relax, we watch football, basketball, and we just let those 2 days pass. And it's like, no, I've wasted too many days. I don't want to waste any more days. And that's what it looked like to me, is that I'm in prison looking at society from the outside looking in, and you motherfuckers are voluntarily wasting 2-3 days a week when I'm in prison fantasizing about what I would do today if I could. And so now I operate in a way that, sure, it gives me an advantage because I am acutely aware of the value of every day and time. Ed Milet talks about life as a game of inches. It is. Every fucking day I gain an inch. I take an inch. I take an inch. I take an inch. And then I'm miles ahead of people, like my people I went to high school with. Gave you guys a fucking decade of a head start. And you know what? It's so easy to progress to a level in life that most people will never see if you just take an inch every chance you can.
Dude, Adriano's going to clip that.
And Mark is definitely somebody who does not tolerate mediocrity from the people around him. And that's why it's like, it's so, every time I hang out with him, it's like, it's so energizing and motivating because he does not tolerate mediocrity in any way.
Did you have any startup capital before you started these
No.
businesses?
What's
the short answer?
I'll tell you the short version. It's like, dude, I came home, I had absolutely nothing.
$0.
I mean, $0. I didn't even have socks and underwear. I had nothing.
Yeah.
Damn.
And my parents were nice enough to allow me to come home and live with them. So I lived with my parents. My aunt let me borrow a car that was a 2004 Toyota something, some little smart car looking thing with 300,000 miles on it. And dude, I got a job stocking shelves overnight, which was unbearable. I don't know how people work overnights, but I did that for a few weeks. Mm-hmm. I saved up $1,500. And that was all the money I had to my name, all the clothes and everything that I had my parents bought for me. So I saved up $1,500. I spent every dollar I had on a set of dumbbells, kettlebells, and a used rower off Facebook Marketplace.
Okay.
And I had this nice lady in my town. And this is, again, God, dude, I'm telling you, I'm a fucking believer. But this lady, I'm wondering, like, how am I going to have, I can't pay rent. I don't have any money. Where am I going to train people? I knew that that's what I wanted to do. But all of a sudden, I got a fucking random message on Facebook Messenger from a lady I've never talked to before. That's like, hey, I heard you're looking for a place to train people. I don't have much, but I do have this space if you want to come check it out. Met up with her tomorrow. It was a space that I swear to God was no bigger than this space right here. It was, maybe 200 square feet tops.
Yeah.
And she was previously using it as a conference room, just to put it in perspective. And she told me, hey, I know you probably don't have that much, capital or that much business right now. So you can just pay me commission. She's like, if you don't make any money this month, you don't owe me anything. Wow. But if you get clients, you can, just pay me a percentage. And it's like, I had no other choice. That's the only way I could have been able to do it. And she just did this. So I started in this space. with two old ladies that went to the local gym that knew my mother, and they were my first two clients. And early on, I had my best friend, still to this day, he owns a really big gym in Boston, but he gave me some advice, and he said, dude, you just gotta, you've got to treat every client like they're your only client, and you have to operate as if your success is tied to theirs.
Yeah.
So like, unless they win, you don't fucking win. So, and I'm very competitive. So that's how I operate still to this day. The people around me, and Gina can attest to that. It's like, dude, I'm desperate for you to win, because if you're not winning, that means I feel like I'm losing. And so I did that, and it progressed so fast. Like when you just do a good job, like when you just do what you're supposed to do, and you are really just ruthless in your execution of an effective game plan, that's what happened. And it progressed so fast. And then all of a sudden, next thing I know, a building 2 doors down was vacant, 3,600 feet. I'm thinking, there's no way I can afford this. The guy gave it to me for $1,200 a month. A commercial space, 3,600 feet. Like if you know anything about gym spaces, okay,
it's big.
Well, it's not that big, but it's certainly not $1,200. It was certainly more expensive than $1,200 a month. A comparable place I was looking at, the guy want $4,500 a month. So it just opened up, and I'm basically getting this place for free, and it just evolved very, very quickly. And then I had a massage therapy studio across the street. Like it was cool.
I also just like, I people are going to think this sounds weird. I love failing. I love it so much because I set all my friends know this, and one of my best friends has said, dude, like, you do stupid shit every now and then, but one of the things I can definitely admire about you is when you say you're going to do something, you actually do it regardless if you fail or not.
Yeah.
And just even if we're talking about podcasts, I go back to 2015 and I would have podcasts with photographers in New York City, and I was just like, it's not working out. Something's not working out. When I moved to LA, I did a podcast called New in LA. I did 4 episodes of that, and it just wasn't feeling right.
I didn't know that.
I did other podcasts,
Learning.
and when I moved back here, I was like, you know what? Before this one, I was like, you know what? I'm going to review photo books because a lot of people respect my photographic opinion. And I was like, damn, I can't get like 2 subscribers to rub together. And then when we talked about doing this, I was like, yeah, why not? Let's see what happens. And then now that it's taking off, like you have so much appreciation for failing before, and because when you fail, like you can look back on it and you can say to yourself, I tried.
Yeah.
I tried. And like people who don't bother taking risks are never going to do anything with their lives. I respect people so much more when they do something and they fail at it. They fail at it horribly. I have so much respect for that person, especially if they get up and try and do something else.
Failing is one of the best things that you can do in life. And it sounds so cliche, but I mean, I'm the same too.
I can't talk about it enough.
I think about
so valuable.
the failures that I've had in the last like 5 to 10 years, and they were the best things that ever happened to me.
I tell people all the time, man, coming home from prison with absolutely nothing was the best thing that ever happened to me, because now you can't.
There's a level of appreciation.
There's
for
literally nothing that I won't attempt, because if I lose it all, like I know.
Yeah.
I know that I could do it again.
Yeah.
Wow.
I told you, right? This is like such a good episode.
This was one of my favorite
I know.
episodes.
I
I think when I can get apart from politics, even though we talked a little bit about culture anyway. But yeah, I find these conversations so much more interesting.
Thanks so just so you guys know, Mark made the drive out here from St. Louis. And I mean, I wish we could have you on all the time.
No.
But tell everybody where to find you.
Yeah, we'll put your details in the description.
You can find me on Instagram, just Mark Anthony Joe with a K.
Yeah. Thank you guys for listening. Please comment and like and share and subscribe. And we're going to go eat, and I'm going to go pump. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye, guys.
I got to be.
Okay. That was so good.
That was good. I like that.
That was so
good.